This is episode number 171 of the Smart Marketing Show, Marketing with Minimalism. This episode is brought to you by ServerPress, Maker's Desktop Server. They make local WordPress development easy. Check them out over at serverpress.com. And The Query, a new show over on WPwatercooler. We're answering your WordPress questions. Help us out by sponsoring and supporting us over on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/WPwatercooler. I'm Jason Tucker. I'm an IT director and web developer. This is my friend Bridget Willard. She's a marketing consultant. And our guest today is Dave Bloom from SoulSites. He's the founder of the company.
Or Ginger.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Hello.
Dude, I need to get a haircut.
Well, hey, you know, once you show up where you're going, you'll be able to get that haircut, and it'll just work in the place that you're at.
I just want to look as good as the selfie that's on the front of the video.
You just hold up your own photo.
Yeah,
we get haircuts in Canada now because like we're just we're doing better, but they don't do the beard thing, so you're on your own. And so I can't go get a beard trim. And I was thinking the other day, like I have sideburns that I have to manage now. And I have like the sideburns of like the guy in Shawshank Redemption, the guy in the 60s who like knows what really happened. The guy like Tommy. And I'm just like, I don't know if I want this look, but I'll take it.
I know when to trim mine when I can't see the AirPods anymore. That's when I know I need to trim my beard.
I love that. That's a good segue into minimalism. So you got to trim out things.
Yeah.
So, like marketing with minimalism. I love this because so many of the people I see on the internet when I talk about websites, thanks GDPR, we have pop-ups for that. Yes, I want to accept the cookies. I've been to Amazon.com for 10 million times. And then you have like, do you want to join my list? And then we have ads on the side. And then we have a sign twirler up in the banner. And that's not even talking about all the words, the images, and the clutter. And maybe you should get a professional designer. And so let's talk about the opposite. And so, Dave, you're a minimalism guy.
Yeah, I dressed for the show. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. I was actually, speaking of those GDPR pop-ups, I made a comment yesterday, just off the cuff on Twitter, where I was like, I want to see one that, like, they all have this different explanation as to why they're doing it. They're like, they're not like we're complying with the law or we're required to tell you this. They say like, we are this website uses cookies to enhance your experience, and it's always this kind of weird fluff that we're doing this for you. We're doing this to make your website easier. And I wish somebody would just be like, we're doing this because it helps us make more money. So just go ahead and click that button and give us, we're going to put cookies on your browser. So appreciate that. Goodbye. Like instead of like always massaging you.
You should say GDPR CYA. Do you want in?
Actually, the most minimalist one would just be the word cookies and a period and then a button that just says okay. Just cookies. There you go.
And you move your mouse over it and it shows this huge explanation that's like this big tooltip that just pops up, and you don't even have to see any of that, and if you don't want to, but at least for legal reasons you could be like, yep, we're good.
But Jason, I already accepted the cookies the first 10 times I went to that website, so why do I have to keep accepting it if you already have my cookie? Don't you know I've already been here?
This is a problem with web developers. Web developers tend to blow out their cookies all the time on their browsers. And then every time they go to log into something, they're like, are you kidding me? You don't know who I am? Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I already removed my cookies for today, and Google doesn't know who I am anymore.
No, I love cookies. I'm the cookie monster. I take all the cookies, make my life easy, remember my passwords. Go ahead and steal my identity and make my credit score go higher.
I was also wondering, like, if there's a certain audience that doesn't really know that cookies are a digital thing, and they just think like this website uses cookies to make your experience better. It's like, you use cookies. How do you? What does that have to do with an airline? I don't understand. I'm confused.
Yeah, because they only give you that tough biscotti, so it's
it's like
kind
this
of like,
website uses fresh baked cookies to make your experience smooth and
Yeah.
login seamless.
It's much like the save button on well, not in Google Docs, but like if you're in Microsoft Word or something and you click the little save button, which is a floppy disk, not knowing what a floppy disk is, you just think of that as the save button.
oh my God, I never thought about the people
So
that
cookies,
are born who never.
Yeah, you have all of that sort of issue that you need to worry about as well. So I guess that kind of takes us to like the minimalism side of that. Like, how do you get rid of some of that stuff that you just don't necessarily need, but still allow for functionality to continue to exist?
I think that what I try to do is you do, as a user experience practitioner, you do have to think about that. And you often also can notice it in your own traversal of the web. You see a floppy disk and you go, or you see a plugin that has a bunch of icons and a menu, but they don't have labels to them. And so that could be argued as a minimalist approach, but the real minimalist approach is just to put the word there. And so I think that what I've been shifting towards is just like straight talk and using words to say what you want to say, because the web, used to work like that in its early stages before it got decorated. It got expanded into a decorative medium. The specs went wild and they became disjointed, and then the Web Standards Project brought them back together. And so we are all kind of under this spell of this assumption that in order to be relevant or to be valuable, you have to present some kind of aesthetic uniqueness, and you have to put on a fireworks display. Your website should be like Mardi Gras. It shouldn't look like other websites. And that principle, like I look
Mardi
at other
Gras.
media, just as like everybody just wants the
beads,
animation and parallax stuff and all sorts of like explosive accoutrement. But looking at other, like when you take a second to look at other information, like communication tools, like a book, for example, and you apply that same principle to it, then you go like, does a book need to be aesthetically unique in order to be effective? Like, is somebody going like, we can't print this book out on colored paper with dark type. Everybody's doing that. We need to have like a purple background with bright yellow type, and it needs to open up like a calendar in order for it to just like be like remarkable. But the offering is what's remarkable, and the thought of needing to over decorate things is really, it gets conflated with this with beauty and with making you kind of feel more beautiful as a result. This is like the Squarespace way, like build a beautiful website because you're like a beautiful, flower, and you need to have such a unique website. Mm-hmm. But I find that I've seen it like the most effective things to a certain audience is just like, say what you're doing. I don't need to see a stock photo of fingers typing on a keyboard or some monitor with like code on it and an overlay that says something. Just say what you're doing, and it ends up actually looking better, and it's refreshingly simple to just, it's a very obvious idea, but it's kind of painful to think about. Like, I want my decoration, I want my effects. But I'm starting to explore a lot of just ways to present an idea as simply as possible, not have your instinct be to go find an image that has to adorn something, or to think that different sections of a website narrative have to have like alternating background colors or different weights or something like that. Just like, give it to me straight, just like you would in like a conversation. Like, you don't need to just change the tone of your voice like, in order to be, you can have inflection, but what you're saying is what actually matters. So I've definitely been heading down that path.
Too should be in a British accent,
right?
Well, and it seems like a lot of the websites that people go to nowadays are trying to fill in as much of the blank space as seemingly possible. And especially when you're starting out, where for instance, like the website itself was built with mobile first in mind. So you're working with an environment where the space you're able to work through is only that big. How do you, you're to be able to expand it out? Bridget recently was posting on Facebook regarding Facebook's like redesign, and the idea that Facebook used to have, or still has, obviously, but the fact that the whole website needs to actually live inside the mobile app, and it needs to only run on that little small area. And if you're in a tablet, then maybe it expands out just a little bit more. But when you have like a huge monitor and then you load up Facebook on it, you see this, Bridget was like, I really wish that the center of Facebook would just be a little bit wider. So that way it allows for some of that white space to actually be filled in. That's not necessarily a good thing to have it all filled in. There's reasons why you don't want to move your head back and forth and
wider. Okay, so on that, to be like on the other side, just because your website is 1,200 pixels wide doesn't mean that your text should be 1,100 pixels wide. So there's some human behavior about being landscape oriented from an evolutionary biological standpoint. Our eyes scan from right to left or left to right, depending upon your language. And we have a certain amount of periphery. So you want to hit that 700 pixel sweet spot.
Well, I call it the front row of the movie theater problem.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten to a movie late and then you had to just watch The Revenant because your friends were just dragging their asses and you're just sitting there like watching this intense like hunting movie, like what's going on? Is the bear here? And like that happened. And so like when you're so close to a monitor and you're still adhering to that principle of like term paper full width times New Roman, that drives me up the wall. But people need let's say they don't need, but they would benefit from a little bit of instruction on the optimal measure for type, which is actually 66 characters per line, but 45 to 75 characters is acceptable. You want to get like maybe 9 to 12 words per line. That's a comfortable measure. And you can just try it. Even if you're reading lorem ipsum text, just like let your eye, like pay attention to your eye, dancing across groups of words and seeing if you can get back without too much pressure. And once you actually pay attention to the way you read, you can start to empathize with having this kind of tick, 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 all the way across a Space Invaders style type. But one thing that I talk about, I'm gonna insert like an audible here. This is kind of like minimalism, but a minimalist discussion makes the assumption that you want to be minimalist. It doesn't. You don't necessarily have to be. Okay, like a diner menu doesn't need to be set in Helvetica and like have like black text on white. Sometimes things need to be a little bit like ornate because that's the brand. But what you were saying about like pain points about why isn't this wider or why isn't this designed this way is a concept that I've been cooking up in my head. Of course, I started off with user experience design, but user experience design makes the assumption that the designer who doesn't know you, Bridget, Jason, is design. You're not you. You're users. You're a demographic. So they're trying to like guess the combination of convention and uniqueness, or like forward thinking that you're going to want to see. But most oftentimes, like maybe you're used to you're used to using something and then it changes, like Facebook, and then it doesn't matter how good that objectively good that new design is. It's different from the old, so it rocks your world in a bad way, like iTunes changing where the fucking play button is and stuff. So this concept that I started like just looking at this phrase, user experience design, and then I'm like, well, what if the user designed more? So then I just switch those second and third words around, and you have user designed experience. So you give faith to the user to design their way. And if they like minimalist and just the facts, ma'am, and put that information from the internet to come down into their minimalist design, great. If they want to just come through the way that the author or the designer intended it and just go on faith, I'm feeling lucky, then bring it in there. We use this principle, and I guess I'm trying to coin this term, let's just say, of user designed experience. It's going to be my shtick. But we do it all the time anyways. So take your phone, home screen, for example? Are you both iPhone or Android people?
iPhone.
Yeah.
iPhones? Okay. So you have your home screen icons arranged in a certain way. And if Apple did a bunch of case studies and released a new OS, said, you know what, we looked it up, and most people actually like to have their phone icon down here, and then texts, and then emails, and then like App Store. And we're fixing those, and you cannot control them because we're designing for you. It would just be it'd be chaos. Yeah. So they give you, instead of just like foisting a design upon you, they give you the ability to control, not to like control the whole thing, but they'll let you slap a wallpaper of your kid on there, and they'll let you control the order of your app, so that gets wired into you by having designed it. And now you know exactly where your phone is. You might not even remember it, but you know when you pick it up, boom. It's like it's in your biology. So if they were to,
that's why it's frustrating when you delete an app and you're like, God damn it.
Yeah, I have to put something back in the same thing. Like, all right, Uber Eats, you get like a front row seat. You just got promoted to the front, the leftmost thing. And so, or like when an app changes its icon, like when Slack changed their icon, what do you like? It's a better icon. It's a better icon. The old one looks dumb, of course, now, because we are used to this like colorful, like droplet, whatever circle thingy that I have now. But that change, like it violates this like neural pathway that you had and makes you make new ones. So like the design community, I think, can take some pointers from this, because they are all making the assumption that their design is the end of the ballgame, or like their app width is there. Now, dorks like me can go into DevTools or can like get a Chrome extension and write some CSS that says, all right, disable the max width or hide this sidebar. And I do it. You can do it with uBlock Origin. I mean, you can like point out things and like hide them. But like that is, there's an information asymmetry there. You need to be able to know CSS, and you need to,
or
really,
Jason. He did that for me. Remember when Facebook did that thing where like the notifications and the red ones were light blue and the not red ones were a little bit darker light blue. And I said, I can't see which ones are red or not. And Jason's like, oh, I'll just make you a Chrome extension.
Yeah. And dark mode is another example where you get to control the text contrast, and you don't want to burn your eyes out. Maybe you want to sleep better. So it's remarkable how few sites, and those are just examples of like layout, control, and color. But think about all of the different kind of like CSS and style decisions that are made, and decisions that you can actually let your users control a little bit and have some faith. Like maybe they want more white space. You can have a global CSS like north-south padding variable that they can go like, I mean, they can make the text larger on their screen, right? They're allowed to do that. So this principle has been something that's been on my mind, because I want to, the way that I can really practice it now is to build the most minimalist platform that you can, and then start to let your users go, okay, the visitor is actually going to have some control here. We might have a lot of like typography sites do this actually, because I'm a big font dork, but let's say like Klim, which is a type foundry in New Zealand. They have a little like sun moon icon up in the top. So when you're looking at these, samples of their typeface, you can see them with different color schemes. You can change it from a black on white to white on black to like a kind of Financial Times orange and black kind of deal. And that allows you to make a more informed decision, and just like puts you in control, puts the visitor in control. And that's the foundation of like the empathic side of user experience design in the first place, is like thinking about your users, like what they want, and not assuming that they're just gonna like love your design. They'll probably hate it, or they'll have like a little bit of an issue with it. So if you give them like a tweakable knob, then they might be more satisfied with it. Like, hey, thanks for making me like kind of a collaborator in this conversation, instead of having it just be going one way and like you just click on this. And this kind of thing when you really unpack it, you just think about all of the color theory behind the color of a button. Like, what if somebody wants their buttons to just be green? They just want to know that green is the thing you want me to do, as opposed to having to learn your design and learn your navigation structure and learn all of your stuff every time they go to a new website. Like, all right, where's the stuff? I got to learn this. Like,
okay, so that's like the web. I would say my specification of the internet, or basically it's like Las Vegas, where it's just too much. There's too much going on. I mean, I went to Las Vegas when I got married 20 whatever years ago, and then I went again 20 years later for a word camp. And let me tell you, the Fremont experience was extremely stressful. I was pretty much like, I almost held on to Dwayne's belt loop like I used to do with my husband in Disneyland. I wish I was joking. I was so stressed out. There was so much going on. It was agitating to me. And, you know, maybe that's, I mean, a lot of people do like a lot of that going on in their lives because it's exciting. But if you think about the reason why we go to websites, it's for information. So I kind of like the idea of the book. And I talk to a lot of my friends that design websites, and they're talking to these people who are not educated, but think that their website should look like a magazine. And I don't know why we've taught people that the website should look like a magazine instead of a book. But I can't even tell you how many times I've gone to websites and it says, we provide unique solutions for our customers. And I'm like, you could change the name of the business to anything, because that's what a business does.
Yeah.
We don't even know what you're talking about. And then they focus so much time on the decorations of the it's like a model home.
Yeah.
The model home has nobody living in it. It's decorated, but it's empty. And I think it's the reverse thinking and that's part of the problem with so many website design builds is everybody's waiting for the content and they're like, no, just make it look like this. Just build the model home. We'll worry about the content later. Yeah. And then nobody's thinking about the whole purpose of it is for the internet to have the internet's for words. Google's blind. The internet, like we need words. Yep. And I say this all the time. Like, where are the words? What is it that you do? And then don't use words that make no sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the kind of thread the needle through these things that we've just discussed. You have, Bridget, you were just talking about like a model home. Model homes typically have to have a staged, have some type of staged furniture in them.
Yeah.
Well, the same with the iPhone, going back to what Dave was saying with having, you essentially have a staged environment for the iPhone. When I bought my first iPhone, which is, I believe it was the 3GS, if I remember correctly, and the messages button was on the upper left-hand side. The camera button is, I believe, on the upper right-hand side, if I remember correctly. The phone is on the bottom left, and then the browser window, like Safari itself, if I remember correctly, was either in the third slot on the bottom or it was all the way to the far right.
That was fixed?
No, that was fixed. That's just kind of how it was. Well, my phone is exactly like that right now. I have a camera in the upper left, upper right.
Are you grouping there?
Upper left. What's that?
You got the groups going on?
I have the new little weather thingy. Yeah.
No, I mean like that you're making chunks of groups. I've never consolidated my stuff. It's all just chaos. Yeah.
How do you live like that?
They're all over the place. And I'm running the beta, so I have it tells me what the temperature is and all that fun stuff. Ooh. But the idea is that I still have that staged environment. So for instance, if I were to walk into this house and it was already set up a certain way, I would go and say, you know what? Having the kitchen table in the kitchen where it's at right here, and having the dining room table in this spot, and having the couches set up this way. We recently moved into the house that we're in now, which is why like my background's in shambles. And I told my wife, I was like, we have to walk in here and think we can change this however we want. Just because this house was set up a certain way before we got here doesn't necessarily mean it was the best way to do it. It just means that it was the way that the furniture that they had is what allowed for it to all kind of happen. And because of the fact that we saw all of that, essentially we saw the staged home, or we saw the iPhone that already had all those spots in the correct, in the places that Apple thought were the correct spot. You can't come in and go like, oh, we have to have it this way, which allows for like the minimalism piece to kind of come in, because of the fact you may not have, the same number of couches, the same number of furniture, you can kind of move it around and play with it a little bit. For instance, Dave's background, where the room that he's in right now, I'd imagine that you like having some white space between things, especially in that corner that's there, and you want to make sure that it's lined up appropriately and looks nice and all of that. That's where like that minimalism piece comes in. And I'm not someone who's a designer, but I would love to have a tool that just told me like, here's the Google font I'm using, give me the secondary Google font that I have. And like that exists, because there's people like me who are not designers, but I need to know like what's the other font that I need to install.
Well,
same with color, right?
If you need the font pairings, I should have put this on the tool. Let's go to Typewolf. He can help you. Jeremiah Schoaf at Typewolf can recommend some pretty solid pairings there. And by the way, I'm in my wife's office. My perch downstairs, blank white wall. So I probably recorded from there, but we got some some people working downstairs. So, but yeah, that definitely makes a difference.
Well, I just noticed for myself when I went on vacation in Texas, and as a child, I would have been like, no, I did the drive from Nashville to San Diego on the 40, the modern Route 66. And I was just like, there's nothing to look at. It's boring. But as a 47-year-old, I was like, whoa, I didn't even realize how stressed out I was. Mm-hmm. And how agitating it is to drive in Southern California, because not only are there so many lanes with so many cars, but there's so much going on, like in your visual field, that you have to pay attention to. There's banners, there's signs, there's amber alerts, there's all kinds of things happening. And so as you're driving, you're just constantly looking and going. And so one of the reasons why I did it as a road trip is so that my hands would be on a steering wheel and not on this computer for 6 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I just acclimated very quickly. I was getting my work done in 4 hours.
Yeah. It's surprising.
I was way less stressed out. And I was like, and then I drove back and I dumped out onto the 91, which some of our local people will know. And I'm like, there's 8 lanes of bullshit. And I'm like, you know what? I made the right decision, because I'm back and I'm just like, there's so much happening. There's so much you have to pay attention to. And we're forgetting that the reason why we build a website is for marketing. The marketing should have words on it. The words should persuade the user to purchase something, whether it's purchasing this idea of you, or purchasing a product, or purchasing a service. But I used to talk to website people who are like, oh, that's just marketing. Yeah, well, the only reason why you have a job, dork, is because of marketing. And I say this in love, but it's true. There's only one reason to have a website, and it's for marketing. Whether it's subtle marketing, or personal branding, or an e-commerce store so you can retire and live on the beach in Indonesia, it's all marketing. And when you forget the words, you've lost your purpose. That's my rant.
I like the analogy to the road and the lanes, because a lot of people are designing a lot of websites that have a lot of lanes, but a car can only be in one lane. So putting sidebars and those I'm guilty of this in some of my stuff, so don't hit me too much, but like those kind of 3 boxes, 3 features, or even 2, you're asking somebody to split their eyeballs in half and read, and they're going to pick one lane. So you might want to suggest to them something rather simple on one side, like local navigation, which I'm a huge fan of. Just being able to jump to different sections of a document and know that that's over there, but not like demanding your attention. And you can focus on this one like tube of content on the other side to go like, okay, this is what's here. Not only has CSS and JavaScript and all of the cool things that it can do, and all of the celebrations around the cool things it can do, like awards websites that award sites that like have count up timers to when they can be shown to you. Have you ever seen any of these like super fancy sites that are like, okay, this site won the greatest site of the day award, and then you go to it and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like it has to load itself to display to you. It has so much crap on it. Right. I'm like, that should be disqualifying right there. I want to see it. They're like, hold on, this is gonna be so cool.
Wait for
like,
it.
Yeah. Like that's not a like so like that bounty of like decoration stuff like that bled right into all of the page builders. So like I mentioned Squarespace earlier, so they're all about like you can drag and drop and tweak the color in a tiny MCE editor. You can make your text like big and puffy and pink, and then below it can be like another color, like whatever you want. And so they loosed this like on the amateurs of the world under the guise of like a site builder that's going to allow you to not have to work with some like shitty developer. Like you can do it. And so everybody just starts putting together these like refrigerator magnet constructions of words.
That's a great analogy.
And they don't know. Yeah. Like
that needs to be a blog post.
Okay. Like they don't understand, like they don't have the foundation to know why it's bad. They just are proud that they put it out there, but then they kind of can sometimes look at it objectively and be like, that doesn't look like the agency sites that I see. And the agency sites are like just stark, like Dieter Rams, like simple, clean, neo-grotesque sans serif, just like one nice photo, not a whole pop-up gallery that you gotta just go through and stuff like that. So I think that all of those extras are kind of just like psychologically, people are trying to make up for maybe some weak content, or maybe make up for like a weak product. Maybe their product is just like, encouraging people to do something with a PDF that they sell to you for your email address or something. They're not actually shipping something, or they're trying to lend an image because like everybody loves images, and like an image, people respond to images. So if they're an SEO professional, they feel like they have to capture that like photographically. But like SEO work, which is vital, is doing keyword research and like tweaking one of the many different like little WordPress plugins and putting your meta description in. Nobody wants to like watch that, so don't even bother like slowing down the page load and making it inaccessible with an image. Just like,
or renaming image 8724.png and then writing in the alt. I did that when I worked at the agency. That was part of my job, is renaming images and writing alt tags. It's not sexy.
It's easy. I always say, I think I said this to you before, Bridget, I was like, an image may be worth 1,000 words, but it doesn't load as fast.
Oh, that's
it is like, and it certainly is not as, it could be worth that, but when if you're not actually selling the product that the image is capturing, and you're just kind of trying to like put an essence out there. I don't know how long I've just just scanned through Unsplash, trying to be like, what's the ideal thing here? What's the image here? And it's all these like models and like, people in the middle of like it looks like a Janet Jackson video from the 90s, the people standing on spheres. Or like, no, how about the table of like Apple devices like laid out with like the watch next to the phone? Like, whose desk looks like that? My desk is full of just like, empty coffee cups and crumpled up pieces of paper. Like, so like, imagery is definitely like, removing imagery is okay. You can have a website, and if you're worried about your like credibility taking a ding, or like getting questioned because you don't have the status quo of a website, the status quo of an ad, then make the words stronger and make less of them. Like, you don't have to, there's so many of these like metrics on the web that are designed to keep you cranking fluff out. Like even like the concept of maybe a blog post being written by somebody who's not in your company and just as being like, no offense, like, but like you can tell when you're reading a blog post that's written by like an Upwork or like kind of like you know what I'm saying? Like
tread lightly, my friend.
Let me get you another shovel. Here's another shovel.
It's like defining the thing over and over again instead of like getting to the point.
Because it is fluff. That's what you get when you outsource to Fiverr.
Sure.
Or whatever.
Right.
I mean, yeah, there's tons of that fluffy. It's like it's the blog post version of stock photography. It's bullshit. It's not worth anything. It's not even localized to the. I've had arguments with clients that I don't even work with anymore because they want generic copy. I'm like, I don't write generic copy. Mm-hmm. So go find somebody from the Philippines. No offense.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I believe that. Well, it again, it's dependent on who's looking, because like I went towards setting up a minimalist like website product because I was looking for people who had minimalist websites. I got a kick out of seeing a lot of like developers, like the founder of Kirby has a super minimalist website. I think his name is Bastian Alagier, if I'm pronouncing that probably incorrectly, but I can put like a link or give you a link to that. His website is so, when you talked about being refreshed on the road by being able to see the horizon, like try looking at a website that doesn't have any navigation, that just has like the content right there, and read an article about like simplicity and paring down. And you feel like you're reading it in like a Japanese tea house, and you're just kind of, you can hear the, like you can, it feels like there's a monk outside like raking the sand thing, and you're just kind of like, you're at peace, and you're just like, oh my God, that was just, there was no sidebar barking at me. There was no little chat bubble saying, can we help you with anything? There was no subscribe.
Those chat bubbles need to die in the middle of the town square with, a really bad hanging where it doesn't work the first time. So here's the thing.
You should be able to like duck hunt shoot it, I feel like.
That would be great. That needs to happen. Somebody built that game in CSS. Okay. I know it's like a JavaScript thing. They could do that. But here's the thing, like, God damn it. I forgot what it was.
You lost it? You can't lose it while you're saying it. That doesn't work that way.
It does with insomnia, but I know, like, the thing is that decision fatigue. Sorry, I came back to it. Insomnia, fatigue, decision fatigue. When you're on a website and there's all these other choices, sometimes it feels rushed. Like, oh wait, well, I don't have that much time. Maybe I should go look at something else. Maybe there's something better. Almost like the Tinder concept of like there's more to look at. I wonder how much of that plays into, bounce rates. And everybody's so obsessed about the bounce rate. Like, to me, if they go to this one page and they bounce, that tells me they got what they needed. I don't care if they bounce. They read it. I just want the time on site high. Like, I just want to know that they're reading. To me, that's what matters, because what I'm doing is teaching. So if they're reading, that means something to me. And I know we're not really an ad show, but we have to talk about soul sites. So like you and I found each other from Alex Denning, blah, 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 blah. Yep. You're my client for all the disclaimers. But when, we had a couple meetings and blah, 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 and I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. But then I was like, oh, this will replace tap.bio, which costs $12 a month and is a pain for me to deal with. And it's still like a bunch of stuff. And so like, for me, I use this as my link on Instagram because I know that, and Jason and I have gone back and forth through this. Like, I made my tap.bio, so he made his version on his website with Beaver Builder. And so for me, I just wanted certain links, like buy this book, buy this book, buy this book. This is my stuff. Like, here's a consulting hour. So like, that is the best thing, because when you're on Instagram and you go link in bio, so many of my clients that I used to help with Instagram are constantly changing what that link is.
Mhm.
So having a bunch of links are just there
Yeah.
and
Well,
makes
here,
sense. And then not only that, but when you're reading it on your phone, because you're on Instagram on your phone, it's
Mhm.
clean.
Yeah. It's also the these sites are the this is actually getting a little bit of a design refresh. I know I kind of talked shit about those earlier, but like the thing I like about going full boat minimal, or at least like almost full, like you'll see a few of these sites, like of the people, the practitioners on here, like Bridget and Ariel, I'm a bookkeeper and an author, are that if you go or if you go to Ginger Soul, like Ginger Soul, I was like thinking about, first of all, this made me distill what I do into like 140 characters, and that helps. Like when you see that up front, it's like, here's where you're at, this is what is going on here, and you'd be surprised how often that sentiment is betrayed when you go to a website, because like you just said, we design solutions for customers. Like, what the hell do you do? This gave me enough of a constraint, because there's no imagery, that I was able to just say, all right, here's all of my wacky ideas. Maybe a website that gathers recipes without assaulting you with food blog nonsense. Maybe an index of stand-up comedians that I like, because there doesn't seem to be a centralized one. The concept of user design experience that I explained to you earlier. And the nice thing about this is that, like, I didn't have a bunch of like color options, even though we're introducing a few more. I didn't have a bunch of like decorative things, border radius, gradients, background imagery, all this stuff to worry about. And I just wrote. And I ended up writing about my inspirations. I wrote about some designers and typographers and technologists that like helped me shape my approach to things. This also happens to be a fully accessible website, because there's no like alt text to forget or to have to know about. There's local navigation in the mobile view, so that you can just jump to areas that you want. If you came to me and said, how do I get in touch with this dude? You just click on this page and contact, and you're there. You don't have to like suss out some kind of navigation. It's just there. And it's like the size of the page is probably a few kilobytes. So it's the fastest loading, accessible, like kind of out of the box site. But I'm not like, those are things to kind of congratulate yourself for, but they just happen to be side dishes to just a minimalist approach. And this, what I see as a big, like kind of a tragedy of web design and of site building in general, because I've been in the site building game using Beaver Builder, using Headway, back in the day. Shout out to all the Headway people from way back. It's that really good ideas and really good, like, and the kind of like when you have a conversation, like, why doesn't somebody make an app for that? Why doesn't somebody make a website that shows like some unofficial rules of the dog park? Why doesn't somebody make like just a list of the top fried chicken places in Toronto or something like that? Why doesn't that just information just get published in a way that isn't part of a rushing river of social media that just like passes you by? Why can't it just get like memorialized at a domain and just sit there and be easy to work with and load quickly? Why do we have to just compel ourselves to think of a website as this monstrosity, as this huge chore of content strategy and layout and technical knowledge? Most ideas just die on the vine because people are just like, most people don't have their own websites because of this. They're immensely useful tools. Even if you're gainfully employed, you're not selling anything. Maybe you just want to champion.
You're always selling yourself.
Sure.
That's why it's perfect for resumes.
Yeah.
LinkedIn people.
Yeah. If you just like need to pick up a side hustle, or you just got like, you're out of work because of COVID and you need like to learn how, like, take a couple of LinkedIn learning videos and start selling your time for $50 an hour, then that is like, you can go and play the site building game. But if you're not a web developer, like, whatever you're going to build is going to kind of suck anyways. And you might as well just like make a more direct connection with somebody who wants to hire you, and make it very clear to them who you are, what you do, what you've done, what you're working on, and how to get in touch with you, and then just back away.
Yeah, in 5
Right.
minutes, not
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like when I first built my self-hosted site, it was a blog post. It's pretty much ended up saying I never, ever, ever want to do this again. Got me a job, but I never, ever want to do that again. And I don't even do it. I have a designer now. I'm over it. But the thing is that there's so many choices just with themes.
Yeah.
The themes is a black hole.
Yeah.
And every one you use has a different feature. I always say featured image, social media thing, but like header size.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different header dimension. So you have to make that again. And that was like before Canva existed. And I was just so frustrating that I don't even care anymore. And that's the thing, is that websites are so important, and I wish people could understand that we do need that, because we are always selling ourselves. LinkedIn is something I preach about all the time, because maybe you're not looking for a job now, but that's not when you need LinkedIn. You have to build this community of people.
Or maybe connecting somebody.
Yeah, you have to participate.
Yeah.
And then that's when you get remembered. Like when I started freelancing, people were like, wow, how did you do that? I'm like, I was just a great human for like the 9-10 years previous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're still great, Bridget.
Oh, thanks. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, and I did start doing social media, by the way. I started doing collections. People don't know that I do this, but I do collections for 25%. And so when they were like, wow, who is your first social media client? That's not how I started. People were like, well, oh man, what can I do to help you? I'm like, do you have accounts receivable that's over 45 days old?
I love it. Shakedown.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, so you don't even know what your choices are. So why not just build that out, and whether it's soul sites or something else, like focus on the words. And I almost think that would be a good idea to start a Google Doc and just write what's important, and forget about all the wireframes, and get back to what matters.
If you can write the best, like 10, like write a listicle. The 10 ways to ask for a client to pay your outstanding invoice that are like nice and smooth, like just like, hey, just looking to square up and move forward, or something like that. Like I
have a blog post about it.
Oh, you do?
Oh, of course.
Okay. So share it with me.
I will.
Okay. What is your favorite way of phrasing that? It was like, hey, it looks like we got a little bit of an outstanding guy here. Like,
you start with that.
You just say, please pay now, or do you say?
Do the first thing I do is, do you have everything you need in order to pay this invoice?
Mm-hmm. So you're getting them in the conversation.
Yes.
You're not giving them. You're extending a helping hand.
Most of the time.
How can I help you open up your wallet? Yeah.
Right. Because most of the time, invoicing problems exist because we invoice the wrong person or send it the wrong way. There's a mistake on our end. And then we make them feel guilty because the accounts payable strategy is to not pay attention to the people that don't care. So if you don't
Bridget,
care,
was this the right one?
Yeah. You got to ask. You have to ask. And nobody wants to ask, but you have to do it. Don't be afraid of the phone call. And you got to do it right in the first time, but you also have to send an invoice. And if they didn't pay, you also got to stop working. That's what I do. If I don't get paid, I don't work. And then my client would go, hey, I noticed you didn't post on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, you didn't pay the bill. So
I think the connection between this and soul sites is that if somebody has this information and they don't have the technical know-how nor the time to set up a blog to put it up there, that information still deserves to be up in the world, and it can serve to demonstrate your capabilities, like maybe you're a small business person who struggles to get invoices like paid, and you don't know what you're doing wrong, and you're sitting there waiting for $5,000 to come to you, and you need somebody's help. So you look for the person who wrote the book or wrote the page on this. And so having that information up there and reducing the barrier to entry of that information to get globalized is like, gives everybody else, oh, my friend made a little site about this. They didn't put it in their blog necessarily because they're not a blogger. They're not.
I think I'm going to buy a URL and then throw it on Soul Sites.
That's the funnest part about it, actually, that I haven't really worked yet, because I own several domains. Yeah, everybody has a few domains that they just bought. I bought one that's called thanksasshole.org, which was like a completely I was going to start like this nonprofit kind of tongue-in-cheek, thanks for not picking up your dog poop, or like thanks for cutting me off, and like kind of like PSAs, but like sarcastic ones in a kind of a Colbert Report kind of way.
Yeah, learnpark.com type of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or thanks for taking that seat with your backpack. Appreciate it. Yeah. Right? It's just an idea, but like that is just sitting there, and I'm just renewing it every year. And if I just like wrote what I just said down or something like that, or maybe wrote a little bit of a vignette of sorts, like then that could just get up there and be in the world. That idea can just get out, and everybody has a list of links or a list of capabilities, or just some like thoughts on a subject, maybe some thoughts on like how to fix a broken system, or how to treat thy neighbor better, or whatever, that they want to have be viewable and disseminated to the world, but they just don't have the time to sit down and learn how to be a blogger.
Right.
And they also don't want to get washed away on Twitter and Facebook, like where everybody else is just trying to like big up themselves anyways. It can be made somewhat permanent. It can be made respectable by being at like, something.com, like
right,
expressed in that way.
So it's tool or tip. It's 8 minutes past tool or tip. We got too excited.
All right.
Okay, so my tool or tip this week is translating SRT files for subtitles. So I was asked by my German client if it was possible for me to make a video and his students could read the subtitles in German. So I'm like, well, I know I can make the SRT files with temi.com. So I found this, and it's free. You literally just drop your SRT file in there. You pick the language from a drop down. It uses Google Translate. And then, so I did it in French, Spanish, Dutch. I mean, not Dutch, German. That's Deutsch, whatever. Anyway, so I asked him, how did you read the subtitles? He goes, I didn't see any mistakes. So, something to look at for maybe making your videos more internationalized, especially if you have other language learners. And that
looks great. What is SRT?
SRT is a translation. It's subtitles. I don't know what SRT means. What does SRT mean, Jason?
Subtitle RT?
I have no idea.
All right.
I just know you need it.
Might be like real-time translation or something. I don't remember what that one was, but there's a couple different file formats that the various places like Facebook and YouTube and all those places could use to be able to read that subtitle. What's nice about what Bridget's proposing here is the fact that when you take that file that you've already went through and generated through either you wrote it yourself, or you use a third party, or you spend the time on like YouTube and typing in as you're saying the words. There's 100 ways of doing this. But once you've created that SRT file and downloaded the English version or whatever your native language is, uploading it to here and having it translated means that now when you send it back to YouTube, YouTube's going to look at it and say, oh, this person actually created this. We're not having to generate it for you. And so the native speaker who's going to watch that video is going to see it and see that someone actually created this video translation versus it's saying that it's computer generated, which means they're probably going to go like, computer generated, this isn't going to be all that great, which it ends up that, the way that Bridget approached this did work, and a native speaker was able to see it correctly and read it.
That's lovely. Will we be applying this to, in the meta fashion to what we're saying right now?
We can.
All right.
We totally could.
Very slick. I like that Rubik's Cube as well, but it pains me to see it unsolved.
Right.
In a former life when I was working at a law firm, which was like the genesis of me learning design and code. I spent a lot of time just humping a desk, and I would watch YouTube videos about from a guy, I think his name is Tyson Mao, who would teach you how to solve a Rubik's Cube. And then I just kept on doing it and doing it and doing it. And now that is actually programmed in my memory. I can do one in about 2 minutes. I'm not like a speed cuber, but it's a nice party trick if you ever go to somebody's house who's like, Gen X or earlier, who has one lying around, be like, you mind if I just go off into a corner by myself and just take care of this for you? And they'll be like, whoa, look at this guy.
Oh, I just disassembled it. So do you have?
Oh, you take the stickers off? That's how you roll? Okay.
No, disassembled, not.
You're an engineer.
Yes.
Okay.
So your tip, besides the Rubik's Cube.
All right. Can you pop open the link I sent you? Okay. So I, as a designer, you always are like looking for color schemes, and you're sampling photos for colors, and you're going on things like Adobe. It used to be called Cooler, Kuler, but like all of the color schemes that I've historically seen in the world are all these, like, they're for like interior design mostly. They're not web color schemes, and those tend to have like 3 or 4 accent colors and a couple of like shades or tints of. Right. There's like a rainbow thing, but like nothing is suitable for backgrounds or foregrounds. They're not like weighted properly. So in my travels, I stumbled upon this thing called the U.S. Web Design System. And of course, the U.S. government is not notorious for its technological prowess. In fact, it's like, healthcare.gov was like this huge fail, and everybody, nobody's counting on the U.S. government to give them design direction. Most governments' websites are garbage, which is why this whole initiative was put in motion, was to provide a kind of minimalist standard, an accessible, pretty good looking standard for government websites, .gov websites to have, because it was like this MySpaceification. It was the Wild West, and all of them sucked, and they were all built by the lowest bidder and like that. So the way I found this actually was through Google Fonts, because the typeface used here is called Public Sans. And I was like, that's a nice, clean, like humanistic sans serif. And they had an example of a site. I think Typewolf even had an example of a site that was built with it. And then I came here and I saw these color palettes, and I saw that they had every color in the rainbow and then some. And they had a real like dark shade of each idea, whether it's like vivid or warm or just like straight up that color. And then they had a light tint of the same thing. So some of these color, even they're gray at the bottom, right where you are, right below this one, like these are great colors for just backgrounds and text, so that you're not just doing that FFFFFF and 00000 and burning everybody's eyes out with your high contrast layout. Instead, they're like, you can cool it off, you can warm it up a little bit, and they give you these palettes that actually, they have grades on the different colors. You can see the numbers, and then they have these magic numbers where if like the colors are 60 points or maybe 40 points apart, it's AA, WCAG compliant. If it's like 70 points apart, it's AAA compliant. So you have like, and you can mix and match too. You can take that like lightest gray as your background, and then maybe you want like a darker blue that has the right amount of distance between it to be, doing the right thing in terms of accessibility compliance, and it just looks good. And the best part about using this tool is that everybody's eyeballing colors all the time. In fact, even like the most professional web designers, I can see slight nuances where they just kind of eye drop the color here, and the background of this one doesn't match the thing that's supposed to be close to it. So everybody's always using these color pickers with this like gradient grid and just putting their thing around it, or just guessing some hex value, just pulling a hex value out of their ass. And this just gives me the answer. It just gives me like, use this color. Tailwind CSS also has a pretty rich color palette, but they didn't have the whole like, grading system and like what the accessibility stuff was. But I have, as a developer and as like a left-brained kind of empiricist of a dude, I want somebody to just be like, this is what you use. I don't want it to be as arbitrary as it is. Yeah. So like when they say this is good, then I know it's good, and I know it's good for a reason, and it checks a few other boxes that like just pick in some random color. I know that like the color of blue links on Google, I think, was like super hotly contested and all that kind of stuff. So it gives you a nice starting point. It also gives you a rich enough palette so that if you're doing like a minimal website, and SoulSites is going to be chock full of all of these, that you can actually have the courage and the confidence to have a colorful site, that you don't have to have a white site. Everybody always assumes it has to be just use white. It has to be white background for life. No, you can have it be slightly green, or it can be a little bit gold and like maybe a little subtle paper color if you're an author and you want to use a nice like elegant serif on top of it. And those things can start like helping you instead of adorning it with a bunch of images of people with pencils writing on a notebook on an author website. You can have the aesthetic coming from the ground up, coming from the foundation. And guess what? It doesn't impose any performance. Color is free. That's cool. And type is, mostly free. You have to load the file, but then you're not like, you have a more, dare I say, diverse web. And you have, it's hearkening back to the old Apple, commercials of Rolling Stones. She comes in colors everywhere with all those old colored iMacs, remember? Or like all the iPods being the color spectrum. Right. I think we've lost a lot of that. And now there's like, 2 or 3 choices. They're like, no more colors. You pick black or silver or red. And then it's like, why aren't more websites like colorful on the floor?
Well, here's where mine comes in. I've been working on a new project with my wife and I, where we've been building out a new Instagram account. After we moved, this house that we moved into just has a whole lot of issues and tons of issues that we have to kind of work through. So we started an Instagram account called Created Imperfectly. And what it is I need to be able to figure out all these hashtags. And I'm not a huge Instagram person. I'm also a private Instagram person. So I don't really care about any hashtags, because I don't necessarily care if you go off and try to find anything off of my content. But when you have a public facing Instagram account, you definitely need to have some hashtags in there to be able to kind of figure this stuff out. And I'm not one to try to do a whole bunch of research on hashtags to figure out which ones are the most performant and the best and what have you. So this app that I have on my phone, it has a bit of a subscription to it, which is a little funky. But the idea is that you type in the word hip hop and they'll give you a whole bunch of words that kind of relate to it. And then you can either cherry pick, or you can just blindly say, fill up all the hashtags with whatever it is.
That's why they look like crap.
Yep. So if you go through and just manually pick each one of them, you can go through and kind of get those the way that they needed to be. You could also, search for rarity and length, and there's just all sorts of fun stuff in here. So go take a look at it. It's called #expert. It's on the App Store for the iPhone. I have no idea what you can do on Android, but it's a cool idea, and it's something you may want to play around with and take a look at. I know I always just kind of say whatever to Android, but I don't have an Android, so it is what it is. But hey, I want to say thank you very much, Dave, for coming and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. We'd love to have you come back on and talk about, especially with color. I think that we haven't talked a lot about color, and especially if we can talk about using color in our email campaigns, and using color just in general for any of the advertising and marketing materials that we need to put out there. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, Dave. And could you tell folks where people can find you?
Sure. You can go to gingersoul.co, which we saw earlier. to check out all of the little things I'm working on. And I can be found on Twitter at Gingersoul _co, because Gingersoul Co was taken. But that'll have the links to all of the different little musings on there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thank you very much. Talk to y'all later. You have a good
All right. Thank you.
Go help us out on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/WPwatercooler. Here's the fine folks that helped us out over there. We really appreciate them and all the efforts that they put in for helping us out on our Patreon. Hit the little subscribe button and make sure you click the bell. That'll let you get notified as to when we put out new stuff. And if you don't want to be notified and you just wanted to just automatically show up on your phone, we're available as a podcast. You can go listen to us wherever great podcasts can be found, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and you're watching probably on YouTube or Facebook, and also on Spotify. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one. Bye-bye.